Welcome to the Aid Station. I'm Chris Robb, and today I'm really excited to be heading to Singapore to catch up with Colette Wong, anchor for Fox Sports, and an old friend who I first worked with, I think, 15 years ago when I first took mass participation event, the JP Morgan Corporate Challenge to Singapore. Hi, Colette. Wonderful to see you again.
It's been 15 years, Chris. I cannot believe it. But yeah, I remember that day very clearly when I first met you. Such an experience. I think it was the first time I'd ever hosted the JP Morgan Corporate Challenge. And, you were there full of support, full of life, full of encouragement. And yeah, it was really good to meet you. And we've maintained this relationship, isn't it? Funny enough, over the years.
It's been great, isn't it? We've worked on a number of events. Anlene Orchard Mile, I think, was another one. More recently, you hosted the Mass Participation World Conference in Singapore, which was great to reconnect again. And you've got a wonderful background and a great story. So why don't we start with just giving you the opportunity to share a little bit of the Colette Wong story?
Oh wow! Not many people ask me about the Colette Wong stories. I haven't recounted this in a long, long time. But I suppose I'm born in Singapore, born, bred, raised in Singapore. My mom is Irish. My dad is Chinese. I went through the Singapore local system. Went to university in Dublin. I chose Dublin in order to reconnect with my mom's side of the family. I thought it would give me a really good opportunity to spend some time with them because I hadn't really been in touch with my family in Ireland, because back in those days we just didn't travel as much as we do now. Flights were expensive and I was in school, and so I thought it would be a really good opportunity for me to start to get to know the other side of my family, my mom's side. And that's why I chose to study in Dublin, which was an excellent experience. It's also where I met my now husband. He was on a Erasmus scholarship at that time. We found each other there, and we maintained a long distance relationship for a number of years before he finally graduated and then came back to Singapore. Because when I finished in Dublin, I came back to Singapore. I started work here, and he did exactly the same thing. Once he was done, he left Italy. He's Italian. He left Italy, came here to live in 1999, and I suppose, as they say, the rest is history.
Wow, what a great story. I hadn't realized that. Something new. And you've obviously now got two children. And we were talking beforehand that the children have just gone back to school. But
Yay!
yeah, peace. We're the same. Sam went back to school last week and he's loving it and we're loving it. And we don't get a knock on the door every 15 minutes saying, Daddy, when we're
Yeah.
trying to do some work. It's been amazing. But how then did you get into sport, just to round that background off?
Yeah, well, I had come back to Singapore following my graduation, and my plan back then was to return to Europe because that's where my boyfriend was at the time, and I wanted to be with him. So I had these grand plans of going back to Europe and doing a master's there. But because of the calendar system, I came back here, I think it was in August or September. And my plan was to take a year off before returning back to Europe to continue my studies. And in that time, I got an interim job, a part-time job with MediaCorp Singapore, the national broadcaster. And I think it was a 3-month gig that I did with them. And towards the end of my gig, I bumped into the friend of a brother of mine who was working at MediaCorp, but he was working for the new arm of MediaCorp, which was called TV12. And they had just started up a sports unit, the very first sports unit in Singapore broadcasting. And they were looking for reporters to build their team. And, we started talking and he said, oh, we're looking for reporters. Would you like to come for an interview? And I said, well, I've got all these grand plans of doing other things. But I went back and spoke to my boyfriend back then. And he said, look, if an opportunity like this comes up, you should grab it. You should at least try. So I took his advice. I went for the interview, and lo and behold, I got the job. So I took the job and started out as a cub reporter with TV12. It was fantastic, a lot of fun. I mean, I was only 23 years old at that time. First real permanent job. I was going out with my crew, filming, doing stand-up interviewing administrators and local sports athletes. And it was a great amount of fun. I think that was the best time ever of my career. And that's where it started, Chris, with
Wow.
that chance meeting with this friend of my brother's, and then it took off.
Amazing, and obviously passionate about all kinds of sport. If I'm right, you're a
Yeah.
Manchester United fan. So I guess during lockdown, you've been maybe it's a good season not to be seeing so much Manchester United, but they're certainly on the up. As a Liverpool fan, I had to get that dig in. I'm sorry, but what's
You are local.
what's lockdown been like? Yeah, I've got one on you now. At last, we've been waiting for a long time for that one. But what's it been like in lockdown? I guess sport wise, you said you've just been started back at work 3 weeks ago, so been doing all that from
Yeah.
home. What's day to day been like?
Well, I mean, I've got to admit, I didn't mind the lockdown too much. We had the kids at home, so that was a lot of fun. We had to come up with ideas of what to do and as a family. And what we started to do a lot of was exercising. So my daughter started to do online video workouts, but with her friends. And then she slowly roped us in. She got us involved in it. Me and my son would start to do these online training videos as well. We took it outside when we could. We'd go for family jogs, family runs as well. I quite enjoyed the downtime, outside of the lockdown. It's quite a mad rush, isn't it? I know you as a parent, and you're full on at work as well. It's a real rat race that we get sucked into. And so when the lockdown went into effect, I felt a huge moment of relief, and as if something was lifted off my shoulders. It wasn't a holiday, it was just an enforced break, and it allowed me to gain some kind of perspective about what I wanted to do, how I wanted to go on with living my life day to day, instead of running around like a headless chicken all the time, picking the kids up, sending them here, me going to work, coming back, cooking, it's just a constant mad rush.
Mm.
And I think this time away from all of that allowed me to gather my thoughts and to realize that really as a society, or even just as a family, we just need to slow things down a little bit and live in the moment a lot more and appreciate the things around us. So that's the one thing that I really gained from the lockdown. It went on for 2 months. It's recently been relaxed a little, so we have been allowed back into work. The kids are now back in school. I've been at work actually for the last 3 weeks, ever since the restart of the Bundesliga. So that's my beat. I've been doing studio shows around the Bundesliga. So once that restarted, I was able to go back into work. So that's lifted a little bit of the boredom and tedium of what we would do at home, because when you can't get out of the house, when you can't do what you're so used to, play your sports and things like that, it does tend to get a little boring. So now that I'm out of the house on the weekends now, it gives me a chance as well to socialize with colleagues, and that's been a real plus point for me the last 3 weeks since the relaxation of the lockdown.
Fantastic. So, I mean, any particular challenges? Anything you learnt about yourself? It sounds like you adapted to it quite nicely and made the most of it. But were there any things that you thought, wow, I didn't really know this about myself, or this was a real challenge to deal with, the being at home or being away from work or
To be
anything?
honest, no, Chris, I really enjoyed it. I know a lot of people struggled with it, and I guess we are lucky in that way. I mean, we live in a small apartment. It's not big at all, so it's not like we have a lot of space to roam around and to get away from each other. But just being able to sit back and relax and spend that quality time with the children. I mean, the kids were doing stuff by themselves as well. There was home-based learning going on, so they had a lot of schoolwork to do in the daytime. So I wasn't involved with them 24/7. My kids are 14 and 12. He's just turned 12. I just forgot. 14 and 12. So they're more independent. I don't have to, be with them 24/7 and to try to entertain them all the time. So there was a really good mix of my time and family time as well. And to be honest, the days actually went by quite quickly. I didn't find them too much of a drag. I think the only thing that I really missed was, one, seeing more of my mom. Because of the lockdown, we couldn't see too much of each other. The other thing was I recently got into playing tennis again, and we are in a league, and that league was suspended with the lockdown. But away from the league, it was just that social element of getting together with my girlfriends. We have a group, a team. We're called the Smashing Steffies, by the way. And we train together every Tuesday. And we would get together maybe one more time in the week to have an extra training session between ourselves. So I really missed that element of socialization. We had a lot of fun. And, I was really getting hooked onto tennis. And you could see the improvements bit by bit, week by week, and it was a really good time. So I haven't touched a tennis racket now for, I think it must be 2.5 months, and that's something I'm really looking forward to getting back and doing again once this whole thing alleviates and we're able to get back to normal life again.
Fantastic. And isn't it that whole, I think that's what so many people have realized, that love of, we are by nature gregarious humans. And, we're sitting here in the mass participation industry saying, are people going to be too terrified to come back to races? I think more and more I'm seeing anecdotally what's happening around the world. People are craving that connection again. They want to be with their friends. They want to do those things. So
yeah, which is why my returning to work, even if it's, for 3 days a week, and seeing my colleagues for, 3-4 hours, that reconnection really gave me a lot of energy, and I feel very energized these days, maybe because I haven't been to work, and therefore I'm ready to go back and for the challenge, but that reconnection with colleagues and friends has been really, really good.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. I always like to talk on the show about leadership, and obviously you've been around sport, you've seen many great leaders, interviewed many great leaders. Is there anything from a leadership perspective that stands out, a particular leader or a particular leadership tip that you'd love to share with the people that are watching, please?
Gosh, you caught me off guard there. And I mean, in terms of leadership, I look to people that I looked up to. It's been a long career for me, 20 years, and I've worked maybe with 3 or 4 different companies. And, starting out as a junior cub reporter, female, at that time, I think I was the only female reporter at MediaCorp. Everybody else around me were men, and so it's very easy to start to question yourself whether or not you're the right fit for a job like this, since you're working in a kind of an all-male industry. And I remember very early on in my career, my bosses, YK and Terrence, they were the 2 mentors for me. They were the ones who hired me. Remember, I was fresh out of university. I had no experience whatsoever in TV reporting or anything to do with the media, because that had nothing to do with what I studied in university. And they really came in to support me from day one. I don't know what it is they saw in me, but they found time away from their own jobs to sit down and to offer me advice and support, not just, the day-to-day, or how do you edit and how do you write a story. It was really all about how do you approach dealing with people that you might meet on the job. Because back then I was a very young 23-year-old and probably very, very insecure, and they were there to advise me, and more importantly, give me that confidence to go out and to know that I can do a proper job and a good job, even as a 23-year-old young reporter, even as a woman in working in a man's world. So their support and their confidence in me, really, that's what got me going. And I think that's why I stayed in the job as well, because I saw that they saw something in me, and I felt energized to show them that, yes, they were right. They were right to trust me. They were right to give me the job. They were right to have confidence in me. And I will always remember that. I mean, this is going back, Chris, 20 years ago, 22
Wow.
years ago, and this is a long time, but it's ingrained in me now. And I think it's so important as what I'm doing. It's so important to share that belief with other people as well. In my office, I think it's 70% women producers. Isn't that wonderful?
Wow, how it's
It's
changed.
not a man, yeah, it's not a man's world anymore. Sports production isn't just a man's world. We've got loads of women in there. And I find as I get older in my career, a lot of them look towards me for encouragement and support. And, I look back at the time when I had just first joined Media Corp and what Terrence and YK did for me, and I feel it's so important to be able to give back the same way YK and Terrence gave to me.
That's so wonderful. And that opportunity that we have as more kind of senior statesmen in our industry to set that foundation. I had a beautiful
You sound so
story.
old, Chris.
Senior statesman, respected statesman, and that foundation has taken you to talk about respected across the region as one of the leading Fox Sports anchors in Asia, and I speak to people who know of you in other parts of the world. It's amazing, and I find that inspiring to have gone from there to there, and love to always end on something inspiring, and I'm sure you've seen so much inspiring in your career. But is there one particular thing that stands out that you'd like to leave viewers with on an inspiring story, Colette?
There have been so many inspiring stories, especially in this time with the COVID-19 and the lockdown. And, me being in the sports industry, I was very curious to see what athletes in the region are doing during this time, because they're not able to train. They are now, the Olympic team is able to go out and train, but during the lockdown they had to stay home, so they were working out from home, going out for runs by themselves. But if you're a footballer and you're playing in a team, you couldn't get on a pitch to do exactly what you have to do on a football pitch. So I didn't go out. I was just curious, and I did some research about what local athletes in Singapore were doing, and I came across some really great stories. There's a former local sprinter. His name is UK Sham, retired a few years ago, and he came up with a great idea. Because of the lockdown, kids were at home, they couldn't go to school, and in order to do home-based learning, you need essential items such as a laptop, and obviously not every household has a computer at home. So he got together with Sports Singapore and carried out a drive to garner and collect as many laptops as possible. And he hooked up with another company which refurbished these laptops. And I think they collected about 600 laptops. Wow. And in the end, we're able to give these laptops to households and families, and especially the children who didn't have them at home, so that they could carry out home-based learning. So many other athletes were trying to raise money as well for the less fortunate. They come up with ideas like doing workouts at home. So Dipna Limsa Prasad, she's another ex-athlete. She and her friends came up with an idea where if you make a donation, they will do 15, burpees or 15 push-ups or something like that. So they collected about $800 for charity, and then all of them came together in a nice Zoom call and carried out whatever they had to do. So they had to do something like 150 exercises each, which they are athletes, but if you have to do reps like that, it is not easy. No. So, it's been really nice to see that local athletes have been contributing back to society as well. They're not just looking after themselves. It's a nice group of young athletes we have in Singapore, and I'm really proud of them.
What a wonderful story. Love the laptop one. That's incredible. And
yeah.
glad it's not me having to do 150 burpees.
You could do it. I know you could.
Colette, as always, so wonderful to catch up. Time's flown by. Thank you so much for making the time. Wow. And look forward to soon catching up with you in person back in Singapore.
Well, Chris, I had such a good time talking to you. It's always lovely having a chat with you. You yourself have been an inspiration to me, Chris, and good luck to you. Good luck to your family, and I hope to see you very, very soon.
Thanks so much, Colette. Wonderful. Thank you.